Thank you.
I just started it. Sorry.
Awesome. No, no, thank you. Thank you. That's perfect. So we are going to record this session as well. So we'll be able to share this recording of the session in case you need to share with any colleagues that maybe were not able to participate in this call. I think it really helps out, especially for those with timing and scheduling. And I know today is a Jewish holiday as well. So for those that cannot attend, we can provide the recording of the session. We will provide that within our FAQ document as well. And then I mentioned that we will share the information after the session, the PowerPoint, the USDOL directory, and the FAQ document. And we also do request if you can enter any questions that you have during the session in the chat box. What we'll do, that makes it easier to keep track of the questions for developing an FAQ document, but also for us to respond to the questions. So at the end, we'll go one by each question and just make sure we fully review the questions. Or if anyone has any comments, we can open it up with the microphone, whatever. So, but we'll get through that process as well. So with that all being said, with the housekeeping, maybe we'll move on with the PowerPoint presentation and get started with that. So in March of 2018, Governor Murphy announced development of the first officer apprenticeship in the state of New Jersey within New Jersey Department of Labor, as well as what we call the New Jersey Apprenticeship Network. So the officer apprenticeship is the office which, again, as I mentioned earlier, myself, my colleagues Bill, Tammy, and Lauren, and also my colleagues John Basik and Dawn Lynch, are all part of New Jersey Officer Apprenticeship within New Jersey Department of Labor. And again, we administer the various contracts and apprenticeship-related programs that are issued by Department of Labor. The New Jersey the New Jersey Apprenticeship Network is really, we're developing this network, which we started in 2018, which, as you may or may not know, is with apprenticeship, right? There's a lot of partners involved in it, right? You have employers, you have the training providers, you have those that are being trained, the apprentices, you have other state agencies. So there's a whole host of stakeholders that really make up the network. So even by you participating in this workshop today, kind of makes you part of the apprenticeship network, right? You're interested in a grant opportunity, interested in registered apprenticeship. So that network we've been building over the years with literally hundreds of partners, and probably right now close to 1,000 partners that we have in various states that have developed this apprenticeship network. Next slide, please. So again, the mission of our New Jersey Officer Apprenticeship, as we build out that New Jersey Apprenticeship Network and continue to build that out, we work very closely with U.S. Department of Labor, as I mentioned earlier. And we also, our Officer Apprenticeship kind of serves as a one-stop shop for employers, nonprofits, secondary, post-secondary institutions, and other stakeholders that are interested in developing apprenticeship programs and opportunities. Support new and expand upon existing pre-apprenticeship and USDOL registered apprenticeship programs in the state of New Jersey. Establish pre-apprenticeship and apprenticeship programs in non-traditional high-growth occupations and sectors, thus the creation of this GAINS program, which now we're entering our 5th year with the GAINS program. To help better align secondary, post-secondary, adult education, occupational training to meet labor demands unique to New Jersey, and also develop career pathways that lead to economically sustainable wages. Help apprentices earn college credits and access robust career counseling, and increase diversity and inclusion in apprenticeship programs. As you probably read within that notice of grant opportunity, we have a large focus on serving targeted populations. In addition to that, also, and we actually expanded in this grant opportunity, focusing on supportive services as well. So we are trying to continue to support those that may not have been included in registered apprenticeship in the past by really providing increasing diversity and inclusion in apprenticeship programs. And lastly, one of our other missions is to remove economic barriers to training and upskilling through targeted investments. So with our GAINS program, we're really targeting on trying to expand into sectors that may not have been traditionally registered apprenticeship type of industries in the past, but also not forgetting about those apprenticeship programs that have been in existence. Actually, it's the 85th year of registered apprenticeship, started in 1937. So U.S. Department of Labor created in 1937. So for 85 years, registered apprenticeship has existed, and it continues to really expand and grow. So as we continue to expand and grow, we try to target our investments to those programs that will really help expand existing apprenticeship programs and build upon new apprenticeship programs. Next slide, please. So registered apprenticeship is a program. Registered apprenticeship program means it's registered and approved by U.S. Department of Labor and provides classroom on-the-job training in an occupation recognized as an apprenticeable trade and also meets the program standards of enrollment and graduation under the federal regulations. So simply put, registered apprenticeship is a training model that's formalized through U.S. Department of Labor. So the employer, or what we call a sponsor, it could be like an intermediary such as a union, would then have their program, which would include various occupations approved by U.S. Department of Labor. And under their standards, that employer or the union or that sponsor would be committed to providing classroom training, which we call related technical instruction, as well as on-the-job training for those apprentices. So that's exactly what our Gains program does, helps offset the cost of hiring those individuals into apprenticeship opportunities. And we help offset those costs of the classroom, or also known as related technical instruction, as well as on-the-job training. And we provide a wage reimbursement to employers up to 50% for that on-the-job training that occurs. Next slide, please. So components of registered apprenticeship. So there's 5 major components to a registered apprenticeship program. First, you obviously have to have the industry or employer involvement. So the employer is key to have that registered apprenticeship program created. While there are standards that U.S. Department of Labor has, there is some flexibility in developing that registered apprenticeship program through U.S. Department of Labor. But the employer and industry obviously is a key component of that. As I mentioned earlier, related technical instruction is that classroom training. So for most occupations, it's at least 144 hours a year of classroom training that's required for each year of that registered apprenticeship program. Each occupation has a different length of the occupation that's required. So it could be a 1-year registered apprenticeship program for some occupations, and for others, it might be up to a 5-year registered apprenticeship program. So each occupation, again, is dictated by U.S. Department of Labor standards, and each year it has requirements for that classroom training. Second, you need a sponsor or an employer for that on-the-job learning. So the employer or sponsor, so a sponsor could, as I mentioned, could be a union, could be what we call intermediary, and I'll talk about that in a few minutes as well, commits to providing that on-the-job learning for those new apprentices that are hired. Another component, obviously, is an apprentice. You need an individual to enter that apprenticeship program to be trained. And lastly, is a progressive wage structure for skill gains. So the idea behind registered apprenticeship is as an apprentice's skills increase, so each month, each day they're really at work, but as their skills increase by doing the actual job of the on-the-job learning, as well as receiving the related technical instruction classroom training, the model dictates that there should be a progressive wage structure. The employer dictates what that is, but from the beginning of the start of that registered apprenticeship program to the end, there needs to be some kind of increase in wages doing that. Sometimes it's every 6 months, sometimes it's every year. That's worked out with U.S. Department of Labor when the employer works with U.S. Department of Labor to develop that program. For our Gains program, the starting wage has to be at least $16 an hour or more, as indicated within that notice of grant opportunity to be considered for funding. So just keep that in mind as well. At least the starting wage has to be at least $16 an hour or more, and there needs to be a progressive wage structure during that program. Next slide, please. And benefits. So obviously there's benefits to the employer as well as benefits to the apprentice as well. So for employers, and this has really been found, a lot of studies have been done by U.S. Department of Labor that determine that for employers, there's reduced turnover, and mainly because of the commitment by the employer to provide that training, to provide that classroom training. It shows the commitment to the employee that the employer is committed to having that employee properly trained, and it does reduce that turnover for employers. It increases the workers' productivity by being properly trained within the model, the apprenticeship model. It helps increase the workers' productivity. It helps build a customer's skills base as the company provides training to those apprentices. The skill base of the employer will naturally increase as well. Provides a pipeline of skilled workers for succession planning, and has quality standards, right? So if you have a formalized training program that really spells out exactly what that training is going to be, the quality standards becomes part of that as well. And the benefits for the apprentices includes hands-on career training. You develop relationship with employers. It provides an increased future earning potential for apprentices. And it does also provide a national credential. So U.S. Department of Labor provides a completion certificate for each apprentice within New Jersey that completes their registered apprenticeship program. And we've issued, U.S. Department of Labor has issued, I think, 6,000 over the past 4 or 5 years or so. Actually, I'll go over that in a minute as well. So those are some of the benefits to the employers as well as apprentices. And next slide, please. And I mentioned before, so there's two different traditional models for registered apprenticeship. One is two different models. One is the traditional employer model. So in this model, you have an employer, say who's also called a sponsor. And so say typically a mom and pop shop, right? Maybe I have a plumbing business. I have 10 employees. I want to create a registered apprenticeship program. So I'm the employer. I'll connect, as it says on the left side of the slide, with U.S. Department of Labor. They assist with the registration of the registered apprenticeship program and for the approval. And then also New Jersey Office of Apprenticeship can assist not only through our employer engagement unit, but as well as through funding such as our Gains program. And then on the other side of the chart, you have the related technical provider who's going to provide that classroom training. So that related technical provider could be done in-house. So a union or an employer could do in-house training, but it also could be a secondary, a post-secondary educator. It could be vocational schools. It could be a trade school, online provider. As you develop your registered apprenticeship program with U.S. Department of Labor, the RTI provider is also included in that process, and our employer engagement our employer engagement unit can help assist with locating a related technical provider if you need it, or also U.S. Department of Labor can help out as well. And then also you have the apprentices as part of that model. So the second model is what we call the workforce intermediary model. So this is like if you consider, like, say, a union, or it could be a trade association. So for instance, you might have a trade association that has, say, 1,000 employers throughout the state. So instead of each employer developing their own individual program, that say trade association could be the workforce intermediary. So that workforce intermediary in the center there would be responsible for developing those occupations, would then obviously work with U.S. Department of Labor to approve their program. As the top chart says there, the RTI provider, coordinate the RTI related technical instruction provider. And on the right side of the screen, you have the various employers. So you have one sponsor, which would say in this example, the trade association. Then you may have multiple employers, or say a union. A union is the sponsor of training, but then each employer actually hires and provides the OJT training for each apprentice. So those are just two different models to consider for a registered apprenticeship. Next slide, please. So this kind of sums up over the past almost 5 years now of how we've progressed. I'm sorry, it's been 4 years. Progressed with apprenticeship in the state of New Jersey. So currently we have over 8,000 registered apprentices in the state, 8,096. We have 1,115 total registered apprenticeship programs in the state. And since Governor Murphy took office in January of 2018, which is now about 4.5 years, we have registered 504 new registered apprenticeship programs, which is an 82% statewide increase. We've hired 11,908 new apprentices during that time. Over 6,000 have received the industry recognized certificate of completion that U.S. Department of Labor issues to each apprentice that completes. And then according to the data from the last quarter of 2017 to now, total apprentices have increased by approximately 1,313, which is the highest level of apprentices since 2013. And then lastly, this trend accounts for about a 19% net increase statewide in active registered apprentices. So I think it really gives a good picture of the work not only by our office, New Jersey Department of Labor, but by the commitment by U.S. Department of Labor on a federal level to really advocate for registered apprenticeship in the state. And also we have a lot of other partners and a lot of other state agencies that really help out as well. So and also it's the funding that we provide. Our Department of Labor has funded over almost $30 million in notice of grant opportunities over the past roughly 4.5 years. So it really shows the investment by the state of New Jersey into registered apprenticeship that really helps out to boost up these numbers and really provide employment opportunities. Because again, registered apprenticeship is full-time employment in a what we call a formalized training model, registered apprenticeship. So hopefully that gives a little bit of a good picture of what's going on, and hopefully if your application is funded, the apprentices that you place will be counted in the next slide that we do next year. So anyway, so I'm gonna wrap that up right now. I believe the next slide is Miss Perez, right? Yes. So I'm going to now turn it over to Irene Perez again, who's with the New Jersey Division of Vocational Rehabilitation Services, and she'll talk a little bit about serving individuals with disabilities and talk more about her unit as well. So thank you, Irene, for joining us today.
Thank you for the invitation. By the way, great numbers, and my hats go off to your unit. Again, my name is Irene Perez, and I'm representing New Jersey Vocational Rehabilitation. I'm the business outreach representative, and what I do specifically, I work with the businesses, I do presentations, and what I do is I'm hoping to strengthen their business, enhance career opportunities for individuals with disabilities, and I work collaboratively with employers and the workforce to provide talent. We're now partnering with the New Jersey Apprenticeship Office. We would like to provide talent and also services to employers that they can benefit from. And I'm going to talk briefly about the services that the employers here today can benefit from should they hire an apprentice, a qualified apprentice. Okay, one of the services that we first offer that we can is through a disability awareness training, and that basically it's an introduction to working with individuals with disabilities, dispelling myths that you thought, and I believe that training is very effective. We also provide a certification for employers and for your HR team. We also provide assistive technology presentations and assessments to individuals that you may hire an apprentice and they may need an assistive device. It can be a computer laptop. It can be with specific software. It can be a hearing aid. That's very broad. But it's an assessment that will require them to help you or help them be more productive in their workplace and be able to do the job to your satisfaction. We also always, in our presentation with the disability awareness training, we also provide ADA. We also go through the ADA and what's updated, because that's constantly a document that is constantly changing. So we believe the employer needs to be aware of that, and also their HR team. We also provide a brief introduction of federal bonding. What is federal bonding? What's your understanding of that? And that specifically is not just for individuals with backgrounds. That is very broad, and I think the employer could benefit from that too. We believe that. We also provide tax incentives that they can benefit from should they hire the apprentice that has a disability. We also can provide information on customized training and planning and a job analysis. What is the job analysis? What does that entail? How can that person, should we already decided this person can do the job, how can they do it more effectively? Do they need an assistive device? Are they a good candidate? These are things that your employer may need. We also, in order to provide the talent that they may need, you may think DVR has lots of clients, which we do. We can do a targeted hiring event, a recruitment just tailored for your needs. If you're looking for apprenticeships and you already approved apprenticeships, you can also reach out to DVR, and we may have candidates that are qualified for that apprenticeship. We also do on-the-job training contracts, which we vet them, we approve them, and when we receive a client that it may even come from you as an employer, you said, this client has a disability, I want them to be in apprenticeship, we can refer We can refer and provide the sources, the supports, which can be a job coach, a support. It can be, like I said, assistive devices. It's all tailored to that individual's disability. And we can also do referrals to other agencies. We're also doing another technical training on October 26th at 1 o'clock. If you're welcome to attend, if you want more detailed information about working with a person with a disability in an apprenticeship. If you have any questions, James, if you can put my email on the chat and they can forward it to me, I'll be happy to answer them. Thank you.
You're muted, Jim.
Thank you, Bill. Thank you, Bill. And thank you, Irene, for the presentation. Just a quick question for you, Irene. Do you want your email address or in the chat, or did you want to keep the email address at the bottom of this slide that we have for the business outreach team?
I at this time, if you can put it in the chat, it would be helpful.
Your
they
email
can-
address, right?
Yeah, my email. I would get them from both, but just in case, if they want like immediate response.
Good. I will add that to the chat, and I appreciate your support and the information that you presented as well. Thank you so much. And now what we'll do is turn it over to Lauren. Lauren's going to talk a little bit more about the GAINS NGO itself. So Lauren, I'll turn it over to you.
Actually, I'm going to take this section. I'm sorry.
Sorry, Bill. Sorry.
I think we had the same last time. So what I'd like to do is give you a little bit more details on the GAINS grant and the GAINS program specifically. So the mission of the GAINS program is to increase statewide capacity for registered apprenticeship opportunities by offsetting training and education costs for businesses in high growth industry clusters. As Jim said earlier, our goal is to expand on existing registered apprenticeship, but also to grow into non-traditional sectors where registered apprenticeship could both benefit the employers, but also residents and participants throughout the state of New Jersey. Grant funds can be used for related technical instruction costs. That's the classroom instruction Jim was talking about earlier, and on-the-job wage reimbursement costs, which would be done through a OJT where we would pay up to 50% of the person's salary for a period of up to 6 months. The GAINS program promotes increased diversity and inclusion in apprenticeship programs by encouraging recruitment from specific populations. Some of these populations are listed on the page here, and these would be more hard. Some of these would be harder to place populations, and our applicants would be looked at more favorably if they were to show and were to recruit populations that would be included on this list. So the GAINS program was designed to establish new and expand on existing registered apprenticeship programs in high growth sectors. These are some of the sectors that you see here that we consider high growth industries throughout the state of New Jersey, based on some of the data that is provided to us from our labor market teams within the Department of Labor. So funding for the FY23 program is expected to be $3.5 million, but is obviously contingent upon the availability of funds. But the NGO in which you are attending this, the Notice of Grant Opportunity, sorry, we use a lot of acronyms within the state of New Jersey, the Notice of Grant Opportunity in which you are attending this session through, and the application that you will, if interested, complete will be in reference to that $3.5 million opportunity. Some of the program development and incentives that we provide, that this funding would provide for you to be able to utilize with this grant, are on-the-job training wage support. As I said before, is 50% wage reimbursement for any salaries that are making more than $16 an hour at the time of hire. We would pay that 50% wage reimbursement for up to a period of 6 months. It cannot exceed more than 40 hours a week or 52 weeks. and the OJT reimbursement maximum for per participant or per apprentice would be $12,000. For the related technical instruction support, it's reimbursable only once the apprentice is registered with USDOL, and the wage rate cannot be lower than $16 an hour at the time of hire. Funds can be used to offset RTI related costs, but front-loaded RTI is not permissible under this grant. So a definition of front-loaded RTI would be any related technical instruction that is provided to a participant previous to the grant period that you're receiving this grant for, or previous to the participant being registered with the United States Department of Labor as a Sorry, it muted me and I didn't even move. So I have no idea how that occurred. How did you guys hear me on the related technical instruction support up through? Okay, so I probably lost you the definition of front-loaded RTI. That's probably what you didn't hear. Ultimately,
Yes.
front-loaded RTI would be is not permissible, and what the definition of front-loaded RTI is any related technical instruction that was received prior to the grant period. So if our grant starts on January 1st, any related technical instruction that's received by the participants prior to that January 1st, or any related technical instruction that is received prior to the participant being registered with the United States Department of Labor as a registered apprentice within that for that sponsor. Okay. For development and sustainability, we would like for you to focus on expanding the registered apprenticeship and non-traditional occupation areas, and for the program to the program must be registered with USDOL and on the approved list of apprenticeable occupations. We'll provide you with a link to the approved list of apprenticeable occupations upon completion of this presentation within the frequently asked questions document that we provide. Your first class of apprentices should be registered with USDOL within 6 months of the beginning of the contract period. We are anticipating this to be an 18-month contract period. And NJDOL funding is seed money, which ultimately means that we require you to show us in a sustainability plan what it is that you are going to do as an organization in order to make sure this program would exist post funding from the Department of Labor. Our expectation is for this to not just only exist within your organization because of our funding being available. We want you to show us a way and the way in which you anticipate being able to provide these services after funding is no longer available from the Department of Labor. As we stated earlier, the maximum allowable cost per head is $12,000 per apprentice. Okay. Some NGO highlights. These are some of the things that we would like for you to concentrate on and or see within the NGO when you read through it. But these are the sections of the application in which we would say the greatest weight will be given to your application if you could provide details and show us specifically how you're going to be able to do these things. So the first thing would be to develop or expand a registered apprenticeship opportunities for the greatest amount of individuals. So as we said before, the maximum allowable cost per participant is $12,000, but we would like for you to show us that if there is the possibility you could provide a service to more people at a lower cost, that would obviously be beneficial to the department and to your application. We want you to demonstrate high quality RTI and OJT strategies. Show us exactly and explain to us exactly how you're going to meet the needs of your participants and provide that related technical instruction in OJT, and how it's going to be most beneficial to your participants when they are looking to get into the workforce, or when they're actually already going to be in the workforce. So, and provide adequate compensation for enrollees. As we said earlier, a minimum of $16 per hour, and there should be some structured wage increases that would be provided throughout the time frame of them being in the registered apprenticeship. Programs with larger enrollment or small businesses with fewer than 50 employees will be viewed favorably. This can all be found on pages 11 and 12 of the NGO. Seek to train new hires over incumbent worker apprenticeship programs. So we would like for you to show us that you're seeking new hires and registering them with USDOL as a registered apprentice rather than incumbent workers. That can be found on page 11. Detail the partnership with RTI providers and administer RTI. Structure the OJT program. Provide progressive compensation structure for apprentices. Provide the length of apprenticeship program and successfully receive the USDOL program status. So ultimately, we want to make sure that your participants are getting recruited and that they are completing their apprenticeship so that they are getting their certifications from the United States Department of Labor. So we would like for you to show us ways that you are looking to retain these participants as they come on board and how you're going to do that as time goes forward with the program. To demonstrate a viable strategy to recruit apprentices in one or more of the targeted populations outlined within this NGO. We showed you, I had a slide a couple of minutes ago where I showed you some of those targeted populations, but that can also be found on page 12 within the NGO. Adequately address their cost structure and indicate the level of non-state funded investments, including other sources of funding. This would be what you might understand as maybe like match dollars from other grants. We don't have a mandatory amount of match dollars, but it never hurts for you to show us what other funding you would be utilizing in order to meet the needs of your participants with this grant. Demonstrate reasonable RTI and OJT costs while providing quality training at a low cost ratio per individual apprentice. As we said earlier, the maximum is $12,000 per individual apprentice. But if you can show us that you can do this, you can provide this related technical instruction and or OJT at a lesser cost, that would be more beneficial to your organization as an applicant. And then to provide specific and measurable outcomes that align with the NGO and sponsor goals and objectives. That's found on page 13 of the NGO. So now we're going to hand it over to Lauren, who's going to speak more about the application process within our SAGE/IGX database.
Hello, everyone. So the first steps, if you're considering to apply, is to ensure that you're an eligible entity to apply, and that is found on pages 9 and 10 of the NGO, that your authorized official from your entity registers in IGX, that AO submits the letter of intent. There's a template on page 22. NJDOL approves the authorized official in IGX and provides access to the application. You'll need to obtain your tax clearance certificate from the New Jersey Division of Taxation, and that information is on page 23, and that you register with the New Jersey Department of Treasury with NJ Start, also on page 23. Oops. Okay, so your proposal components, some of the required documents, I'm going to go through the list of them and then I'll explain some of them. So all the following are required information that must be submitted in the IGX system for a complete application. That's applicant information, counties you're going to serve, your previous funding if applicable, employers and sponsors, gains deliverables, the program narrative, executive summary, an implementation plan, a program sustainability plan. You have to show your tax clearance certificate, budget summary and details, and then any miscellaneous attachments you would like to include. So let's look at some of these in depth. The executive summary, you want to describe your plan and process. So that would include a description of your organization, any past New Jersey Department of Labor funding, the occupations, the number of anticipated apprentices, benefits of a registered apprenticeship to the organization and to the apprentice, the career pathway, and any certifications, license, or college credits that the apprentice will earn. Your program narrative. So your missions, goals, and objectives. You'll demonstrate how the proposal aligns with the NGO, your connection to your local one-stop, if applicable, your targeted population. So you want to indicate the anticipated populations for recruitment, and you must include numerical projections. Statement of need. You want to demonstrate your hiring need, and you want to include occupations, job descriptions, and if currently on the U.S. Department of Labor approved list. Your organizational commitment and capacity. So you'll describe your support, resources, and prior experience in successful program implementation. and if applicable, past performance. So provide a description of any past grant performance, including outcome data for the most recent year. And applicants with prior unsatisfactory performance may not be funded with fiscal year 2023 funding. Your implementation plan. So you want to describe how the comprehensive program plan will be implemented. And you must include a breakdown of customer flow and the outline of case management services, your summary of expected outcomes. So the occupations, expected timeline for approval by USDOL, the number of expected apprentice hires, anticipated salary information, and any business organizational successes that are expected. Your outcome timeline. Describe anticipated program development benchmarks and milestones. Target completion of new program registration and hire date for new apprentices. Your sustainability plan is to describe a strategy for long-term success absent of this grant funding. Summarize alternative funding sources and/or strategies to continue activities beyond the contract performance period. The evaluation criteria is that all applications are considered new applications and will be evaluated on the basis of quality, comprehensiveness, completeness, accuracy, and appropriateness to the NGO. And this is a competitive process, and applications are reviewed by a selection committee using a pre-established set of requirements. I'll turn it back over to Bill.
Great. Thank you, Lauren, for that information.
You're welcome.
So everything that we've gone over already obviously can be found within your notice of grant opportunity in a little more detail. So if there's anything that's been a little overwhelming or confusing, please feel free to always reference back to that notice of grant opportunity, in which we will provide to you upon completion of this meeting as well. What we're going to go over now is our IGX database, which is a database that allows for you to apply for the grant, allows for us to complete contracts and do billing and activity reports on a monthly basis. We will provide you, after you receive funding, if you get approved for funding through the grant, additional training on this, but we'll also provide you with a Sage user guide on how to complete the application page by page once you've been given access to the application after your letter of intent is submitted. So don't get too overwhelmed with what we're going to talk about right now. It is just sharing some basics with you so that there's no confusion, or you're not like, what the heck am I looking at the first time you actually go in there and log into the IGX database. So some of you may have experience working within Sage in the past. Sage stands for System for Administering Grants Electronically, and many state government agencies utilize it within the state of New Jersey, including the Department of Labor. We have moved over to a new database called IGX, which is specifically just for the New Jersey Department of Labor. It is a new database. It's not the same database. So any previous grants that you've had with us, you'll still have to log into the old database for. But for this grant and for any grants moving forward within our office, you'll be doing them in the IGX database. So this https njdol.intelligrants.com is going to be the new URL. That's going to be where you would go to in order to gain access to your application. But initially, what we're going to talk about now is just how you would get registered within the database. So if you were registered in old Sage, there's a high likelihood that you're already registered in the IGX database. We have pulled forward a lot of that and a lot of those registered users. But in some cases, if your registration was old and you haven't used it in a long time, or if it was more recent, you may not be in there. When you submit your letter of intent to us, we'll check the database and see if you need to re-register in IGX and let you know at that time. If not, though, we'll be able to try and register you. If you've never used Sage or any other database like this before, then follow these instructions in order to register as what's called a new user within the database. You'll log into the njdol.intelligrants.com website, click on new user, and that will bring you into a registration form, which you see on the page. Provide all of the details that are requested here. That System for Award Management is also known as your unique entity identifier. We ask for that within your letter of intent as well, and that's done through sam.gov. There is a link to allow for you to look that up on the registration here if you click on that search button. So Once you've completed entering all of your personal information and your organization's information, you'll want to enter in the bottom where it's circled the gains program, so that we know that your registration is specific to our grant, and we'll find it easier when we're looking through the list of new users that have currently that have registered recently in the SAGE database, in the IGX database. Once you've completed your registration and we've approved it, you'll receive an email from the IGX website that will tell you that your registration has been approved. Once you get that approval and you get notification from our unit stating that your organization has been given access to the application, along with the IGX user guide that helps provide you with instructions on how to utilize and complete the application within Sage, you would log into the njdol.intelligrants.com web address once again, and you would provide your username and password, which you created on your registration, and click on the login button. This will bring you into what's called a dashboard. Your dashboard is where you're going to find the ability for you to find opportunities to apply. So the first thing you want to do is find this new grant, the Gains grant, in Sage, so that you can open an application. We've given you access to open an application, but now your organization actually has to go in and open that application. So once the dashboard page pulls up, you'll click on the filter field in the top right, and that'll bring you in to the ability to filter through the database and find the Gains grant opportunity specifically. You'll choose New Jersey Department of Labor as the drop down in the provider, and then you'll type in Gains in name and click search. Once you click search, it'll pull up the opportunity for the Growing Apprenticeship Non-Traditional Sectors application for 2023. You will click on that where under name, and that will pull up the opportunity for you to apply for that Gains application. What it'll do is initially is provide you with some information on this grant opportunity. You want to read through it, make sure everything looks clear and you are still interested in applying. If you are, you'll click agree, and that will create your Gains application. Once you click agree, it brings you back to the dashboard page, in which under my tasks, you should now actually see an opportunity specific to your organization. If for some reason you don't see under my tasks the opportunity, you can go to the home button, which is circled in the top left, and you can select the application there. So here's what you're going to see when you actually get into the application. These are all the pages that need to be completed. This is also the information that Lauren just went over with you guys with a little more detail about each page. You'll complete each one of these pages and ensure that you're saving the pages upon completion of each one. And once you've completed all of the pages and you've got everything uploaded and finalized and you're ready to submit your application, you'll scroll down to the bottom of the toolbar on the left-hand side and you'll find status options, and it'll say application submitted. You'll choose application submitted. If there are for some reason an error on any of the pages that you worked on and you didn't complete, or if you made a change on a page and it's requiring you to go back and make sure that there aren't any additional changes, so you may have to go back to a page and just click on save, you'll get what's called a document validation page that appears. That's just making sure that your database and your pages are completed properly. Once you either clear the error on the page or resave the page, you'll be able to go back, click up application submitted again, and then this text box will come up asking if you are sure that you want to change the status of your document. If you're good and everything's completed, you'll click OK, and that will submit your application to us, and we will then review it for accuracy and completion, and it'll go to a panel for scoring. So the final thing that I want to go over is just some important dates in reference to this notice of grant opportunity. The first important date is October 21st at noon. On October 21st at noon, that's the due date for your letter of intent. Your letter of intent is what tells us that your organization is interested in applying. It also tells us that you've registered in IGX, that you've started working on things like getting your NJ Start set up, and you've reached out to get your tax clearance certificate. It ultimately would give us the understanding that you're ready to apply for this grant opportunity. As Lauren stated in the NGO, we provide you a template for the letter of intent. So just follow that template and provide us with the information that's requested on that document by noon on October 21st. The other date here that's important for you to concentrate on is October 28th at noon, which is the due date for the application. We do suggest to you that you concentrate on trying to get your applications in early. If you wait until 11:30 on October 28th to submit your applications and you run into any issues, you may not have enough time in order to get those issues corrected and taken care of. We do have a quick turnaround when it comes to trying to get grants out. So, there's not always a guarantee that an opportunity for extension is even available. So try and get your application started as soon as possible, completed as soon as possible, and submitted as soon as possible up until that October 28th date at noon. Once we've completed receiving all those applications, as I said earlier, we'll go through the process of having them scored and evaluated for accuracy. And then usually within a 45-day period, we are working towards getting contracts in place for those who are interested, or notifying you if your application was not approved for award. The last thing I want to show you guys and provide you with is just some contact information for our Office of Apprenticeship. As Jim mentioned, Nicholas Toth is our director, and this is his contact information. James Manning is the chief of our contracts and programs area. Dawn Lynch is the chief of our employer engagement area, and John Basika is the chief of our policy and evaluation. And lastly, I would like to open up our session to questions. As Jim had mentioned earlier, if you could please make sure you enter all your questions into the chat. That way we have an easy way of being able to go back and reference them if we need to add them to our frequently asked questions. But also it makes it quicker and easier for us to be able to respond to you. So Jim, if you want to take that.
Sounds good. I will. Thank you, Bill. Thank you very much. And I'll just kind of piggyback on what Bill just talked about real quick before I go into the questions. So, right, it's a lot of information all at once within 1 hour. That's why we're going to provide the PowerPoint presentation. But I would just suggest, if you're considering applying for the Gains program, the first thing I would do, submit your letter of intent, right? Because we need your letter of intent. And that kind of just raises your hand saying, I'm interested in applying. That will allow us to provide you access to IGX and to the application. Second, you will actually, at the same time of the LOI, you need to register in IGX, right? So register in IGX, start that process. Also, it was mentioned that you need a tax clearance certificate. A tax clearance certificate is a required document that you need to include as an upload in your application. And that's a letter from the New Jersey Department of Treasury indicating that there's no outstanding liabilities that's owed by your organization. That is required for us to move the application forward for consideration, as well as if it goes to contract. Like, we cannot, if you are awarded a contract, or awarded the grant, we cannot create a contract without that tax clearance certificate. So that does sometimes, it's a quick turnaround if everything's going right. But if you have not been in your NJ Start application or NJ Start application, I guess it's called, or database in a while, sometimes you might have a password issue or whatever. I just suggest don't wait till the 11th hour to request that tax clearance certificate. Get it right away. This way you'll have it in hand and be able to upload it. So anyway, that being said, and we are going to have a lot of organizations applying, so it's going to be very, very competitive. So the only other suggestion I can really offer is to make sure that your application is as strong as possible. Meaning, as you go through the notice of grant opportunity, when we're talking about, say, targeted populations, it's much stronger if you explain your plan on how you're going to hire targeted populations, say, as opposed to just saying that you're going to hire targeted populations, right? So if you have a plan, an outreach plan, I would include that, and all components, right? The more you make it clear to our panel reviewers on scoring it, the better opportunity you're going to have of being funded. So just a couple tips. So lastly, what I'll do is I'm going to go to the beginning of the chat and kind of start with some of the questions. I know the one question was asked, can we get the PowerPoints? Yes, we'll provide the PowerPoint to everybody who registered for this workshop. Um, and we'll email everybody the PowerPoint, the Notice of Grant Opportunity, the frequently asked questions, and the U.S. Department of Labor directory as well. Will you have a list of registered apprenticeship that are not registered with U.S. Department of Labor? So we will provide in the frequently asked questions document a link to the it's apprenticeship.gov website. It's the U.S. Department of Labor's website for apprenticeship. They have a list of all the apprenticeable occupations that are what they call apprenticeable. So there's now a list of those that are not registered with U.S. Department. Do you have a list of registered apprenticeship that are not registered with U.S. Department of Labor? So it's really, we have a list of those apprenticeship occupations that are approved to be apprenticeable with U.S. Department of Labor through that link. So that'll be in the frequently asked questions document when we submit that to everybody. Let me just scroll down here. Yes, we will provide the PowerPoint and frequently asked questions. Within the chat, I did also include the U.S. Department of Labor directory for those the Federal Department of Labor representatives that can help you out. It's based, their territory is based on county, so you can always reach out to them based on the county in which your business is located. What are non-traditional sectors? So quite frankly, traditionally, registered apprenticeship has really been in the construction trade. So about 80% of registered apprenticeship programs in the state of New Jersey up to about 5 years ago were in the construction trades. So non-traditional typically means non-construction, but that also doesn't mean a construction apprenticeship sponsor cannot apply. So non-traditional really means non-construction, but for those that are in the construction industry, you're still able to apply if you have an existing registered apprenticeship program and you're expanding it by hiring new apprentices. So we don't limit to anybody who to any industry that can't apply. It's really open up to anybody. I did include Irene Perez's from DVRS contact information for everybody to contact her with any questions. Of the 3.5 million, what is the typical award amount and how many are grants? How many grants are available? So within the notice grant opportunity, there's really not a limit on how many grants we have available. 3.5 is the top that we can award out. So I would really focus on what your application is, right? So we've awarded grants probably from $40,000 up to $800,000 off the top of my head, if not a little bit more. So it really depends on the organization that's applying and what your needs are and what the employer's needs are, right? So really just got to think about your application and making sure it's reasonable, making sure that you support what you're asking for as far as financial support, and making sure that the number of apprentices that you're planning on being hired, you're going to accomplish that within that 18-month period. But there's not a maximum number of grant awards we can award. No, based on the application we'll receive, will really dictate how many awards we will grant through this process. I answered the question about FY22. So fiscal year 22 ended June 30th of 22. Our fiscal year for FY23, which is Gains Grant is funded through, this fiscal year goes July 1st, 2022 to June 30th of 2023. So that's the fiscal year that we're in right now. To follow up on non-traditional sectors, more specifically, what is your definition of green industry? Does training in sustainable landscaping and agricultural qualify? So again, I wouldn't get hung up on so yes, sustainable landscaping, agricultural will qualify, but it's more important if the occupation specifically is approved by U.S. Department of Labor. That's where, if you're interested in starting that apprenticeship program, I would contact your U.S. Department of Labor representative based on the county of your business and have that conversation about, and they can do a needs assessment and determine what occupation closely aligns to the occupation that you're looking for and let you know what's really needed for that. But don't, as far as applying, the most important thing is making sure the registered apprenticeship program is approved by U.S. Department of Labor and it meets their standards as far as the occupation, and making sure you can meet the standard of within 18 months how many apprentices will be hired during that time. So is the maximum amount the maximum allowable cost per head of $12,000 for wages only or inclusive RTI reimbursement? So the $12,000 cost per head is the total amount per apprentice that can be spent for services. So if you're, for instance, going to hire 20 apprentices during the 18-month period, 20 apprentices times $12,000 a head maximum will be $240,000. maximum, but many of our grants that we received are below the maximum, and to make it more competitive, it has to be reasonable as well. So if you're able to submit an application that's less than the maximum cost per head, I think it makes it a little bit more stronger of an application. And as well as, so the 12,000 per head does include the OJT wage reimbursement and the RTI reimbursement as well. So you can structure your grant to be 100% OJT wage reimbursement for $12,000 a head, or you can do 100% for related technical instruction, $12,000 a head, or any combination of both to make it $12,000 a head maximum. So I hope that explained that a little bit as well. Do we need to go through registration process if we have utilized gains previously? And I think, as Bill mentioned, in your letter of intent, if you currently have a gains grant and you're currently using Sage, just indicate that on your letter of intent, and our staff will be able to help you through that IGX transition there. And what happens if an apprentice decides to leave or is otherwise separated from the company in the middle of apprenticeship? So we understand sometimes there's transition, right? Sometimes life happens, right? So we understand there's going to be transitions during it. No, it's an 18-month contract that's occurring. So if it happens, you need to report that to U.S. Department of Labor if that apprentice leaves for whatever reason. And then also report it to us if you have a gains grant within your activity report. It will impact your performance, but if you're serving 50 apprentices and one leaves for some reason, it's not going to dramatically impact your performance. But if I'm supposed to serve 50 apprentices and 49 of them are let go within that 18-month period or don't complete, that affects your performance, and that may impact your ability to apply for grants in the future. Because when we do have the applications come in, we do take in past performance of prior grantees and their performance as well, and whether or not grants will be awarded as well. So if it happens, you just need to report it. But if it happens and it really impacts your percentages on a higher level, it will impact what we call the performance level that you have provided to that. Next question, how long typically does it take to receive an approval or denial from IGX registration? So when you register an IGX and submit your letter of intent, I'm going to say on average within a 24-hour period for the most part, we're going to respond. If there's any issues, we will contact you. Bill, that's fair to say, right? Within 24 hours?
Yeah, obviously, if you're registering at 5 o'clock on a Friday or on a Saturday, it might not get done until Monday. Monday is a holiday for us here in the state of New Jersey, so we won't be in the office on Monday. But yes, we usually try to get it approved within a 24-hour period, as long as there's no issues. There wouldn't necessarily be a denial of your IGX registration. We would be able to give you approve and make you a new user in IGX, but it may take a little bit of additional information in order for us to give you access to the application if something was missing in your letter of intent. Just so you know, if you've registered in IGX but you haven't heard back from us, it's probably because you haven't submitted your letter of intent yet. Once you submit your letter of intent, that's what tells us to go into the database and check and look for your new user registration. We don't necessarily go in there and check it every day. For organizations, for people registering, if there's nothing for you to be applying for in IGX. So if you've already registered and you haven't heard anything back and it's been a little bit, that could be why. If once you get your letter of intent submitted to us, we'll go in and we'll check it and we'll get that registration approved.
Exactly. There's another question. How does being awarded this grant affect eligibility for other state grants or SBA grants? So I can't speak to other grants on what their eligibility is but for gains, we do encourage braiding of funding. So if there's funding that can offset, for instance, related technical instruction costs, and just for argument's sake, say it's $8,000 a head, and gain's going to pay $4,000, and you can use other funding, whether it's by the employer or other grant funding if it's allowed. We do encourage the braiding of funding. I just don't want to speak to the eligibility of other state grants or SBA grants because I just don't know what their requirements are. I will say with the on-the-job training wage reimbursement, again, this grant does allow for 50% of wage reimbursement. So the intent is the other half to the other 50% being paid by the employer. I don't believe that we can allow usually the employer has to do that 50%. So I think using other grant funding, especially state grant funding, might be an issue for the OJT wage reimbursement side of it. But as far as other costs within your grant, as long as the other grant funding it's allowed, and you check with that grant funder, I think it's something we can talk about. How do we know the legislative district? So, if you need help with that, send me an email. I can tell you what legislative district you are. But if you just Google New Jersey legislative districts and enter the town in which your business is located, it'll give you what legislative district you are. But if you have a problem with that, send me an email directly. I can help you out with that. Where do vocational schools and adult education programs fit in the grant? So again, vocational schools and adult education programs might be the training provider for those sponsors or employers that have approved registered apprenticeship programs. I think it might, I won't say it's not possible because they are eligible entities on applying, but if a vocational school or adult education program applies for this grant, the key component is having an approved registered apprenticeship program, defining who that registered apprenticeship program sponsor is, and having those employers signed up that are ready to hire those individuals. But I think the most part, vocational schools could be an RTI, related technical instruction provider, for those sponsors or apprenticeship programs.
You could also be a referral source. Sorry, Jim. You could also be a referral source to sponsor who's looking for participants. So if I don't know, let's just say if your adult education program was specifically providing English as a second language for those who maybe are coming from another country with credentials and certifications, but they need to learn the language a little better in order to be able to get into the workforce. So if you were to finalize and get somebody through your ESL class and you needed to try and have a referral to them in order to get them into employment, you may want to work with some of our gains recipients as a referral source for you in order to get those participants placed into employment, because obviously a registered apprenticeship program, although it is a training program, it requires employment to be in place in order for them to be in the registered apprenticeship program. So it could be a benefit to you in that way as well.
Thank you, Bill, for that. And let's see, there's a few questions here in this one question. I'll take them one by one. Would the Gains grant be usable for setting up English learning support for prospective apprentices? So support of apprentices is an allowable cost, so supportive services. So I think it may be possible to include that in your grant. But again, the primary focus of Gains is really the related technical instruction and the on-the-job learning support, but there is allowable program support as well. So that could be an allowable cost within your budget for that. Wage reimbursement for employers. How does that work for this intermediaries? So the applicant, whoever applies for the grant, would be the lead agent in administering the grant. So that lead agent would be responsible for billing, sending requests to New Jersey Department of Labor through the expenditure and activity reports, and then including that wage reimbursement to the employer. And then that lead agent would need to disperse those funds back to the employer for that wage reimbursement. We can when we have our grantee meeting, we talk a little bit more detail about that. Membership. Oh yeah, that's membership organization members are employers and pay employees. I'm not sure what that means, but so wage reimbursement goes to the employer, but the grantee would have to reimburse that employer for that cost. Can this be applied to existing apprentices as well as new Gains funded apprentices? So Gains is intended is for new apprentices being hired into a new position. So if somebody's already an apprentice, they shouldn't be going into a new apprenticeship program unless it's new. And actually, Mike, I see your hand raised. Do you want to speak more about it? I can maybe elaborate a little bit more if you want to.
Yeah. Yeah. So just to go back to that first question, in terms of the English language learning support, we've had apprentices in the past who, member employees. We're a membership organization. So we act as an intermediary. We provide RTI. And so if the employer has somebody who, say, speaks Spanish as their primary language and has very little English, we have in our curriculum, we can give them like an introductory course, but then beyond that, we don't have full educational materials in their native language. So I've suggested to employers in the past, hey, why don't you, take them out of our program for a little while, get them, an English class, so that then they would be able to move forward in the program. And just kind of thinking if there any way that I can address those needs, whether that's through a translator for active apprentices to help them with the classroom instruction, or if that's something where, we can even establish a English specific class.
I would, there's a lot of resources that are available through our one-stop system. I think that the first option might be to see if there's services available through the one-stop or workforce development boards, because I know English as a second language is a course that's they can connect to. So I think that individual going through the one-stop system might be a better avenue to do. But if, in your application, because it is a supportive service, you want to develop or include that in your proposal, I think that's something that the department would look at. I just don't want to judge it right now. I think it's something it is a supportive service. So
and on that second
same
question, in terms of, because we have an active apprenticeship program, would reimbursement funds be able to be used for apprentices who are already within the program, in addition to, new apprentices that are being hired for the program?
it would be for new apprentices.
Very good.
And then I think the next question
That
is the
kind of
16.
answers the next one too, right?
Yeah, let me just scroll down here. I don't know why I can't. Here we go. $16 minimum. Can we use this grant to supplement wages of any apprentice making less than this currently? No, it has to be, again, it's new apprentices. And for any apprentice that touches this gains grant, they have to have a starting wage of at least $16 an hour. And again, it is typically it's 40 hours a week. Usually, the reimbursement cannot exceed 12,000 a person. And again, that's based on a 50% wage reimbursement based on the hours that they work. They can work more hours. If they work overtime, it's okay. It's just that we can't provide reimbursement for those overtime hours. But it's okay if they work overtime hours. And then the time frame to spend funds is an 18-month period.
Months.
We're anticipating grants, if everything goes well, I hope starting on or around December 1st, and then there'll be an 18-month period from that point on. So all funds and all activity would have to occur during that time. And then there's monthly activity and expenditure reports that would be submitted by grantees each month to so we can monitor their progress as well as reimburse them for expenses. And it is a reimbursement model for everybody. So if you are awarded a grant, the grantee would need to spend the funds first and then submit an activity report and expense report to be reimbursed for those expenses. I hope that covers everything for you, Mike, right?
Thank you very much, Jim.
Oh, you got it. Sure. There's a couple more, I think, or one more, I think. If we're unable to apply at this time due to the short time period to get all this done, will there be an opportunity to apply in the future, say next year? So, yes, I anticipate gains continuing. I'm not sure if we'll have another opportunity this fiscal year that goes through June 30th. I think it's going to be dependent upon the grants that we award through this grant program and some of our other programs. And if we have funding available, we may release another one before June 30th. But I would expect, in the next fiscal year that starts July 1st of next year, that we would have the FY24 gains grant. I would anticipate, but everything's based on state funding. And I know I said stuff before the pandemic happened, and we wound up changing on a heartbeat and actually pulling back funding that we awarded to grantees. So that all being said, based on available funding and based on the state budget, and we'll see by then. But we hope to have another opportunity in the future. All of our grant opportunities are posted on our state website. If you go to nj.gov/labor, and there's a link on the right-hand side. I forget what it's called. But I'll find it, put it in the chat real quick. But all grant opportunities are posted there. So if you're an employer looking for state funding to support training, say apprenticeship or non-apprenticeship, all state funding is posted on that website. I'll make sure I put it in the chat so we have it as well. And I think that's, oh no, here's another one. I'm sorry, I scrolled down too far here.
Are there opportunities for individuals who are interested to enter the offshore wind industry?
Yes. So if someone's interested in that offshore wind industry, again, a lot of the construction unions are doing a lot of that work, but there's other employers as well. So um, what you may want to do is that individual may want to send a intake form to our employer engagement unit, and then our employer engagement unit helps individuals connect to registered apprenticeship opportunities that we're aware of. That's one possibility, but yes, there are. I just am not personally familiar with exactly what those opportunities are and that, but that's another one I'll put in the employer engagement link we should have. You know what, Bill, can you add on that FAQ document a link to our employer engagement intake form? I'll send it to you.
Sure.
It'll be good to have that in case anyone's
Mhm.
interested. And that's for employers, um, individuals that are interested, registered apprenticeship training providers. If after this call, absent of the state of the funding, like kind of my team handles the funding side of things, but an individual is interested in registered apprenticeship, or a training provider wants to connect to an employer, or an employer wants to start a registered apprenticeship program, our employer engagement unit is a great first start to have that conversation. So we'll include that in the FAQs, that link to that intake form. Again, I
Dan,
talked
can
about,
I just mention
sure,
something as well?
sure.
This is Dawn. I just want to let you know that we also have federal grants for incumbent apprentices. So if my email is shared in the chat, they can contact me for those opportunities as well.
Dawn, would you prefer your email address, or should we use the intake form link?
Oh, you know what? That's even better. Thank you for that. Yes, I will put the intake link in the chat.
Yeah, if you can do that, Dawn, that'd be helpful. Thank you so much.
Perfect.
Perfect. And then example of non-traditional occupation. So again, earlier I mentioned about, for the most part, construction is the traditional side of the traditional occupations. So I would say non-traditional is anything other than construction for the most part. Could be in the healthcare industry, it could be cybersecurity, it could be, information technology. It's a whole host of in the healthcare industry, whole host. So again, I wouldn't really get hung up on what is non-traditional, what's traditional, what occupation should I apply for. Whatever the needs of the employer is for registered apprenticeship and connecting with U.S. Department of Labor to develop that registered apprenticeship program, it's not already approved. That's the key piece of the funding piece of it. And then a question, would the grant be accepted or denied, or is it possible to get partial award based off of different budget lines? So usually the total application, including the budget, is considered by our department, and it's given a score, and based on funding and based on how many applications we have, will dictate how many grants are awarded. So I think it's really based on a score. So if an application is determined to be recommended for funding, there'll be a process in which we contact those organizations that are recommended for funding to have a conversation about revising their budget if that's needed. Sometimes the budget's acceptable, sometimes there's costs in there that we feel is excessive or not needed, and we have that negotiations where the organization may decide no, it would decide not to get the grant, accept the grant, or we just can't come to terms. But we always come to terms. So I don't want to say that. But so there's a negotiations after that, after the review process, where we do review the budget, and if there's any changes, we work with the applicant on changing that budget as well. Please clarify, do we have to have an apprentice program or hire an apprentice? Well, I think you have to have both, right? You're going to need an approved U.S. Department of Labor apprenticeship program, or otherwise known as an approved occupation, approved by U.S. Department of Labor, in order to have that apprentice be hired into that program. So you really need both in order to have that. And your application would need to spell out what occupation it is. I would suggest when it was approved by U.S. Department of Labor, what's the requirements of the training program of the occupation. I'd put that in my application as well if I were you. Would the 12,000 per student be the total available for program goals as a whole, or is that specific to reimbursements? So the 12,000 maximum per head is the maximum cost per person that we can reimburse for. and that's the maximum cost of your overall grant. So again, if you just do the simple math, argument staking to serve 20 individuals, 12,000 a head comes up to 240,000. So we cannot approve a budget more than 240,000, and your application would dictate how that budget, that 240,000, is spread out among your grants. So you'd spell out in your budget, costs for related technical instruction, costs for OJT wage reimbursement, and what other costs you propose in your application. Let me just scroll down here. Would a training provider apply or join with other applicants to provide healthcare training? So again, a training provider can apply, but I think for the most part, since reimbursement is mostly done to the employer for the RTI and also for the OJT, I think mostly we have employers or intermediaries, but a training provider is not precluded from applying, but I just don't know if that's the best format for applying. They could, but again, you're gonna need to be connected to a registered apprenticeship program. You're gonna need to have employers that are gonna be hiring, and your application would kind of explain how that all works.
And we just missed one. If we, is there a minimum company size required to qualify for the OJT training aspect of the program?
No, there's not a minimum company size to qualify for this grant program, or to become a registered apprenticeship sponsor through U.S. Department of Labor. So I think within our grant, our gains grant, we have that businesses with 50 employees or less are going to be deemed more favorable than the larger ones, yes. I believe. Mm-hmm. But as far as the company size, I wouldn't get hung up on the company size. Again, I would, talk to U.S. Department of Labor and develop your registered apprenticeship program with U.S. Department of Labor, and they can talk about the OJT and RTI and work that all out. Can we have a current employee in one title, utility worker, then apply and be accepted to the apprenticeship program as electrician apprentice? I'd say yes. So if your company develops a registered apprenticeship program, the intention, the hope is to have new hires go into that, but it is possible. I don't know, Bill, does the gain say? I know we mentioned new hires.
It states that it's looked upon more favorably.
Yeah, that's
which you can read into that any which way you want, for it to be new hires. But we do allow for incumbent workers to be trained up, I guess, and go into an apprenticeship like this, where they would be able to increase their living wage and everything else, and ultimately their training. So it is allowed, and I'm not saying that it wouldn't be approved, but if it was going up against a new hire program, it could be less favorably scored by a panel member, based just strictly on the fact that you're not looking to hire new people, you're just looking to increase your own staff. We have other grants within the department through customized training grants and stuff like that that would be more in line with that. That's mainly why this would be looked at more favorably here for us.
Exactly. Thank you for that clarification, Bill. And let's see. Oh, your voice cut out. Green industry. So the green industry qualify. So yeah. So to me, the green industry is just an overlay of existing occupations for the most part. So again, I wouldn't get hung up on the industry. If you're looking to have an approved occupation with U.S. Department of Labor, I would contact U.S. Department of Labor and work on developing your U.S. Department of Labor occupation, right? So within the green industry, there's I think before we had landscaping or something like that. Mm-hmm. There are some occupations that are within that, but also, an electrician apprentice that's working on the windmills out in the ocean, right? That could be called a green industry too. So green industry is really just like a layer on top of existing industries. But again, I wouldn't get hung up if you're thinking about applying for this grant on industries or green, right? I'd really focus on the occupation and then work with U.S. Department of Labor on that.
And then within the chat, Jim earlier provided a list of all of the USDOL representatives by county, so you could figure out which county you would want, who you'd need to reach out to based on the county in which you reside. And we'll also include that list within the FAQ when we send that to you.
Exactly. Thank you, Bill. And let me me just go down. Does funding have to be renewed? Not sure what that means.
We skipped a few, Jim. I'm sorry. Would a training provider apply or join with other applicants to provide healthcare training?
I thought I talked about that before. That's kind of why I skipped that. Was that the
Must have.
same?
Oh, you know what? It was typed in twice. Sorry.
Yeah, I hope I addressed. If I didn't, that person can raise their hand if they like. And then that Dawn added her information in there. Does funding have to be renewed? I'm not sure what that really means, Jennifer. If you want to elaborate on that, you could. Dawn did add her New Jersey employer engagement link where if an employer or a training provider or even individuals are interested in registered apprenticeship, they could click that link to go to that. Do you have specific contact information for US? I believe that's Department of Labor. And yes, we did put that in the chat and we will provide a directory with the email that we follow up with after this call. Is it yearly or is it for the life of the program? Again, the Gains grant is an 18-month contract. We're hoping that, again, we intend Gains to be what we call seed money to kind of start the apprenticeship model. We're not looking to guarantee funding forever for the life of the apprenticeship program. We hope that employers will see the value of registered apprenticeship and the value of making sure employees stay with their company. So we're hoping to provide some cost, offsetting some costs as far as RTI, OJT training to help offset the cost of hiring. And Jennifer, do you want to just maybe unmute yourself and maybe just clarify your question?
Hi, thank you. I'm from New Jersey Transit. That's just what I wanted to ask. I wanted to see if it's something that, since you said that possibly offering this again in 24 or something, if it's something that we would be able to reapply for, and that's what I was just asking. If it's something that would be renewed, if we could keep applying for it, and that's it.
Gotcha. So it would be in future applications, or if it is issued again, it'd be for new apprentices, right? Because that's kind of, we try to get new apprentices hired. So, this 18-month contract for Gains for FY23, if you have, for instance, an occupation that's a 4-year long apprenticeship program, this Gains grant wouldn't cover 100% of the 100% length of the related technical instruction or OJT, but it will provide some cost to offset that for the beginning of it, you know? So I would say that we wouldn't provide funding for the life of the apprentice for how long they're in an apprenticeship program, but your application would dictate how many apprentices you plan on hiring now and how that would work out with the occupations and everything.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, sure. And I think that's the last one. If I hopefully didn't miss anything. That looks like that concluded. Are there any other questions, either verbally or anything else before we wrap up the session? Okay, well then I just, on behalf of Bill Sarbuck, Lauren, myself, the whole apprenticeship team, we really appreciate everybody's time today. We will follow up within the next day or two with an email to everybody with the PowerPoint, the FAQs, the list of U.S. Department of Labor representatives, and we are available as you develop your application. If you experience any issues with IGX or anything like that, we're here to help out. And we wish you the best of luck in your application and look forward to working with everybody in the future. So thanks, everybody.